Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, once again हमारी मुलाकात हो रही है, and of course the course is Fundamentals of Public Administration and the code is MPA 406. Now before we move on to the next lecture, let us have the reflection, which is our usual activity. Now अपने थोड़ा सा जहन पे जोर दें और अपना थोड़ा सा अपने जहन पे जोर दें कि ये सोचें कि लास्ट टाइम हमने कौन से टॉपिक्स पे बात की थी. Okay, let me remind you that we talked about organizing, we talked about like brief concepts of leadership. Now, organizing is one of the functions of administration. Now, in organizing, we talked about different organizational structures. Like for instance, we have talked about horizontal organizational structures. We talked about vertical organizational structures. Now, what are the differences? So when we talk about the public sector of Pakistan, the organizational structure which is presently in Pakistan in the public sector is vertical. Now vertical means the column. So we are here talking about the columns. There are more channels of, like for example, levels of management in vertical. Whereas the next organizational structure we talked about in our previous lecture is horizontal. Now when we talk about horizontal, that means that we are talking about the rows. It's like we like in horizontal organizational structure, we say that there are less number of management channels. Like in case of vertical organizational structures, we have less communication barriers and there is rapid communication and there is less time is required for decision making. So decision making is easy, decision making is quick, and rapid decisions are made in case of horizontal organizational structure. Whereas in case of vertical organizational structure, decision making is slow because there are more channels, there are more levels of management are involved, and of course when there are more persons and more levels of management are involved, of course the decision making process takes time. And when it takes time, of course, the communication barriers also increases, and that takes time, and of course there are more issues. So when we compare those horizontal and vertical organizational structures, so in advanced countries, what they are using is they are using more the horizontal organizational structure. Okay, in our previous lecture, we talked about the brief concept of leadership, which is one of the functions of administration. Now, so who is a leader? A leader is a person who takes initiative. A leader is a person who like motivate others, who facilitate others. We talked about leader who is a coach. We talked about leader who is a facilitator. Now we talked about the real potentials of human beings. So when we talk about the real potentials of human beings, what does it mean? It means that all humans have wonderful qualities. God has given us wonderful qualities, but most of us are not using those qualities, are hidden qualities. जो हम बात करते हैं कि हमारी छुपी हुई सलाहियतें, जो हमारी छुपी हुई सलाहियतें हैं, जो हमारी हिडन क्वालिटीज़ हैं, उनको हमने बाहर कैसे लेके आना है. सो लीडर इज़ अ पर्सन जो कि उन छुपी हुई सलाहियतों को बाहर लेके आने में हमारी मदद करता है, जो कि हमें मोटिवेट करता है, जो हमें फैसिलिटेट करता है. एंड ऑफ कोर्स उसके साथ साथ वो हमें कोच करता है. डेफिनेटली वो हमें बताता है एज ए गाइड के लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल किस डायरेक्शन में हमने जाना है, किस डायरेक्शन को हमने अवॉइड करना है, काम करने का बेस्ट तरीका क्या है, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. सो थिंग्स लाइक दैट. सो we talked about leadership in our previous lecture. Now today's lecture we continue with the previous lecture, and that is we continue with the topic of leadership, which is one of the functions of administration. Now this is a wonderful definition of leadership. And I personally believe that this definition is one of the most beautiful definition of leadership. Let's have a look at it. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Now you see that how beautiful this definition of leadership is. Now when we talk about leaders, so if you want to know that whether you are a leader or not, this definition can help you to decide whether are you a leader or not, whether you have those leadership qualities or not. Like for example, so if your actions inspire others to dream more, so seeing dream is a wonderful thing. And after you wake up, chasing those dreams is also very important. And then if your actions help others to learn more, so learning is an ongoing process. So if you motivate others to learn, and if you motivate others to do more work, and then if you motivate others to become more, like for example, if you are able to increase the potential of your fellows, if you are able to increase the potential of your team members, if you are able to achieve the potential of your followers, so it means that you are a leader. Now, leadership is the influencing process of leaders and followers to achieve organizational objectives through change. Now, you see that leadership is one of the motivating process. Now, in this influencing process or in this motivating process, what happens that the leader is trying to help the followers to achieve organizational objectives through change. Now, of course, those objectives are coming out of the vision, mission, and goals of that organization, and then leaders are using like for example, these motivation techniques with the help of their leadership skills and qualities, and of course they are able to do this with the help of change. Now, what is change? When we talk about change, there are many factors that comes in our mind. What do you think about change? Now, change, when we talk about change in human beings, it means that we are talking about employees here. So when we talk about change in the employees who are working in the public sector of Pakistan, so there are three areas that comes in my mind immediately. The first one is the attitude and behavior. Now, attitude and behavior, bringing positive changes in attitude and behavior is really very important. We talked about attitude like for example, the way we think, our perception. Innamal amalu bin niyat. Amal ka daromadar niyat par hai, and niyat is your attitude. And what is behavior? Behavior is the action part. Your body language, your facial expressions, your actions, your oral communication, your written communication, all of these are called your behavior. So behavior is coming out of that attitude. So attitude is more important and behavior is coming out of that attitude. So what is required here in change, that we need to bring in, as a leader, we need to bring in positive changes in the attitude and behavior of our employees. The next factor that needs change is technology. So what in Pakistan we need to do? We need to, of course, create our own technology. We need to develop our own technology. These are the things we do. And of course, adopting new technology is of course very important, because without using new technology or without having the latest equipment with us, without having the latest softwares, without having the latest equipment, of course we cannot achieve our goals and objectives. So this is really very important, that we need to focus on technology as well if we want to bring out our best. And leaders, what they do, they influence their employees to of course adopt or to develop new technology. The next factor, a change in which change is required, is our organizational structure. Now this is really very important, that as we earlier talked about, that we need to make our rules and regulations according to the ground reality. So we must get the feedback from whatever is happening around us, and according to our circumstances, according to our changing trends, we need to revise our rules and regulations, and in this way of course we can motivate our employees. So I again repeat that we need to bring in positive changes, and the first change we need in making attitude and behavior of our employees positive, one thing. Secondly, we need to we need to develop, or we need to adopt new technology. And the third is we need to improve our existing rules and regulations. So it's an ongoing process. It never stops. So with the passage of time, it keeps on improving. So what we need to do is, as a good leader, we need to focus on these three areas, and with the help of these three areas, of course, we can influence our employees, we can motivate our employees, and we can get the best out of our employees. So this is the responsibility of a good leader. Now, when we talk about workforce management, so when you look at this slide, management is more than getting work done through people. So it is developing people through work. If you want to improve your workforce management, then you need to improve the way you lead people. So now you see that if we want to get most output from our employees, like for example, everybody is a wonderful person. Everybody is a unique person in our organization. Allah Ta'ala ने किसी इंसान को बगैर किसी सलाहियत के पैदा नहीं किया. तमाम इंसानों को अशरफुल मखलूक़ात पैदा किया गया. तो एज ए अशरफुल मखलूक़ात ह्यूमन बीइंग को जब हम देखते हैं, तो ह्यूमन बीइंग्स जो हैं, दे हैव वंडरफुल कॉम्पिटेंसीज. तो लीडर का काम है कि वो उन वंडरफुल कॉम्पिटेंसीज को, वंडरफुल स्किल्स को बाहर लेके आए, और उसकी बेस्ट जो कॉम्पिटेंस है उसको बाहर लेके आए, उसको पॉलिश करे, और उससे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए डेफिनेटली ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल जो ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं उसको अचीव करने की कोशिश की जाए, और उसके साथ साथ डेफिनेटली जो इंडिविजुअल के ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं उसको भी अचीव करने के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हम उन कॉम्पिटेंसीज को facilitate करें, उनको बाहर लेके आएं. And then developing people through work, very important. We have like persons like for example who complain that for example people who have like for example they say that we have boring jobs, or it's like a repetitive activity, or like for example every day we are doing the same things. So if we keep on doing the same things every day, you will keep on getting the same results every time. So what we need to do here is we need to bring in positive changes in their work. So we need to develop our people through work, so meaning that we need to assign challenging responsibilities to our employees. And once we assign challenging responsibility to our employees, definitely they develop through their challenging responsibilities, number one. And number two, of course, the result is improvement in organizational performance, and improvement in organizational and individual performance at the same time. Now, if you want to improve your workforce management, then you need to improve the way you lead people. Now, the way you lead people here means that like for example, what type of leader you are. So in the coming slides, we will talk about the leadership styles. Now, leadership is about influence, like the process of influencing others to understand and agree about what needs to be done and how to do it, and the process of facilitating individual and collective efforts to accomplish shared objectives according to these philosophers in 2006. Now, leadership occurs anywhere. Like for example, whether you are talking about like mosques, or whether you are talking about like in any field, or whether you are talking about some ceremony, or whether you are talking about some informal gathering. So leadership occurs anywhere in the world. Now, talking about leader effectiveness, so what results would we expect to see from a good leader? So these are some of the results. Like for example, when we talk about performance, the job gets done. So these are the possible results. Then the first one is the performance, whether we are able to get done our job well. So if we are able to get our job done well, it means that our performance has improved. So that shows that whether the leadership is going in the right direction or not. The next one is the motivation. Followers are energized. So if we want to see, or if we want to evaluate that whether our leaders are effective or not, so another parameter is the motivation of followers. Now, if the motivation of followers, if the motivation of team members, it is wonderful, or they are full of energy, and they are willing to use their best potential, they are willing to do the best in their organizations, so it means that the leader is successful. So this is another success indicator of a good leader. And the next one is effort. Followers try their best. Followers try hard. Now, followers are only able to do their best if they are highly motivated. So again, this is highly relevant with the motivation factor. And the next one is satisfaction. Followers are happy. Without satisfaction, without happiness, of course, we cannot improve our performance. So it is the responsibility of a good leader to make like its team members, to make his followers motivated, of course, and then motivate him so that it results in better satisfaction. And of course, the better satisfaction also results in employee loyalty. And of course, loyal employees, they are the greatest asset of any organization in the world. Now, talking about skills of effective leaders, every leader, every good leader should have these skills. And the first one is communication. Now, when we talk about communication, what does communication means? Communication means a lot of things. Like, for example, we talk about verbal communication, we talk about non-verbal communication. Like, for example, we talk about oral and written communication, we talk about body language. So, communication की definition की जब हम बात करते हैं, the process of sending and receiving information. Like, for example, we have a sender and then of course we have a receiver. So a sender is sending the message and the receiver is getting that message. So it is really very important. It is the major responsibility of the sender to send a message according to the educational level, according to the understanding level of the receiver. So, and the receiver then gives a feedback. So if that feedback is positive, it means that the receiver is able to understand the message and the sender is able to convince the receiver. Now, this is called a communication process. So there are different communication barriers which a good leader has to overcome in any organization. Like, for example, when we talk about different organizations, like for example, we have different levels of management: top level, middle level, and low level management. So there are, like for example, status barriers. Like for example, we talk about higher grades, we talk about middle management, we talk about low level management. So of course, when the low level management talks to the middle level, or when the middle level management talks to the top level management, of course there are, like for example, there are certain barriers. Like for example, people are grade conscious. Like for example, one person may say that I am on the top level management, and so of course there are some psychological barriers as well. So, and then of course, when we talk about communication barriers, language is another very important barrier. Okay, like for example, if you are using a language which is not well understood by the receiver, so if the sender is sending a message and if that message is in some language which is not properly understood by the receiver, so it means that there is a language barrier. So we must, like for example here, use that language which is understood properly by the receiver. So there are different communication barriers, and a good leader should be able to like for example realize those communication barriers and should try to overcome those barriers. The next one is judgment. Now, of course, employees have different problems, they have different challenges. So we are talking about the followers, we are talking about team members. Okay, talking about conflicts. So when we talk about conflicts at workplace, there is no place on earth where there is no conflict. So having a conflict is a natural phenomenon. But here we are talking about positive conflict. So positive conflicts means that positive criticism. So it is not negative criticism. Like for example, it is not tanqeed barai tanqeed, it is musbat tanqeed. So we are trying to improve the situation. We are giving positive, better suggestions. This is called positive conflict. So judgment की जब हम बात करते हैं तो there are conflicts in all organizations, whether small or big or minor conflicts or major conflicts. So it is the major responsibility of any good leader to use his best or use her best judgment skills, ताकि वो एक ऐसी judgment दे कि जो कि तमाम stakeholders जो कि उस इशू में, उस चैलेंज में या उस प्रॉब्लम में जो कि तमाम स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं उन तमाम के लिए वो एक एक्सेप्टेबल हो. Now, judgment of course is based on the experience and learning of a leader. So if that leader is a like experienced person, if that leader is like of course having good competency, and if that leader knows about positive conflict, and of course if that leader knows about like how to resolve the matters, so of course his judgment, good judgment techniques can help the leader to make a good decision. The next most important another factor is flexibility. Of course people who are flexible, they have more passions, they can control their temper, and they are good decision makers. So having flexibility is a wonderful skill of an effective leader. So people who are not flexible, people who are harsh, people who lose their temper, they are not fit for becoming a good leader. So becoming a good or effective leader also means that you should be a flexible person. Like for example, you should have the flexibility to understand the situation. You should have like that kind of flexibility. Like for example, if somebody is giving entirely an opposite point of view, so you need to hold your temper. You need to, like for example, अपने emotions को आपने control करना है, आपने अपने temper को control करना है, आपने अपनी language को control करना है, आपने manners को नहीं छोड़ना. So this is called flexibility. So यहाँ पे ये चीज़ मैं ज़रूर कहना चाहूँगा कि as a good leader you can think that or you can say that कि जी I can improve my point of view if I include your point of view in my point of view and vice versa. So this is really very important कि हमें अपने point of view को हर वक्त focus करने के बजाय हमें दूसरे के point of view को भी importance देनी चाहिए, और दूसरे के point of view को अपने जो point of view है उसके अंदर आप उसके अंदर शामिल करके. So instead of winning or losing, I think कि यहाँ पे मैं ये strongly recommend करूँगा कि बजाय ये कि कौन विन करता है और कौन लूज करता है, सो विनिंग एंड लूजिंग को छोड़ के व्हाई नॉट कि हम पाकिस्तान की बात करें, अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की बात करें, अपनी लॉयल्टी की बात करें, तो विनिंग एंड लूजिंग की बजाय व्हाई नॉट वी टॉक अबाउट सॉल्यूशंस. एंड दिस इज ओनली पॉसिबल व्हेन वी आर हाईली फ्लेक्सिबल, एंड दिस इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट स्किल्स ऑफ एन इफेक्टिव leader. The next one is sensitivity to others. Now sensitivity means what? Sensitivity means that how caring you are. Like for example, अगर कोई person problem में है तो क्या आपको तकलीफ होती है, क्या आपको feel होता है कि जी something is going wrong. So this is really very important कि जो a good leader is a person who is really sensitive, who is really caring. So this is really very important कि जो leader है, एक अच्छा effective leader जो है, that leader must be highly sensitive. So जो कि अपने employees की care करे, उनके तमाम issues को अपना issue समझे, उनके तमाम प्रॉब्लम्स को अपनी प्रॉब्लम समझे और उनको अपनी फैमिली की तरह समझे. तो जब आप अपने एम्प्लॉयज़ को, अपने फॉलोअर्स को अपनी फैमिली की तरह समझेंगे तो डेफिनेटली यू आर more sensitive, and this is what team followers are looking for. And the next important factor, the next important skill an effective leader should have, that is intelligence. Now intelligence of course is mandatory here. So we need to have those leaders who can analyze the situation, who are intelligent, and who are able to make decisions based on their intelligence. So I think there are leaders who prove themselves with the help of their intelligence, with the help of their intelligent decisions. Now intelligence also means that the leader is able to understand the situation, one thing. Then the leader analyzes that situation, Number two, and then leader is able to define the alternatives, that what are the possible solutions, what are the different alternatives available. And then of course choosing one of the best alternatives is again depending on the intelligence of leader. So becoming a leader is not an easy thing. Of course it requires these wonderful skills, and intelligence is one of those skills. And the next one is stability. Of course, you must be a stable person. If you are not stable, if you do not have that stability in your attitude and behavior, it also means that you are not a good leader. So having a stability, एक आपके attitude behavior के अंदर, आपकी personality के अंदर, आपके aptitude के अंदर एक stability नजर आनी चाहिए, एक मुस्तकिल मिजाजी नजर आनी चाहिए. So we talked about reactive and proactive people. Now reactive लोग कौन से होते हैं? Reactive वो लोग होते हैं जो react करते हैं. Like for example, जब कोई चीज़ होने के बाद, कोई event होने के बाद, they learn and then they decide कि what we should do. Those are called reactive. So the people who in response do something, those persons are called reactive. On the other side, we have those persons who are proactive. Now, who are those proactive persons? Now, proactive persons are those persons who like, for example, forecast, who predict that this may happen in future. So, based on their forecasting, जिसको हम कहते हैं पेशन गोई करना, predict करना, कि वो पेशन गोई करते हैं, वो predict करते हैं, वो forecast करते हैं, कि these are the possibilities, this may happen in future. So based on their forecasting, based on their prediction, they make different decisions. So here we talk about what we need to do here. We recommend that an effective leader is a person who is proactive. Like for example, जो लोग बहुत मूडी होते हैं कि like for example के इस वक्त बादल हैं और एक बारिश होने वाली है, and then their mood is on and they are very happy, और उस वक्त they really perform well. Okay, I can say that of course that really motivates you. But what do you think about those leaders कि अगर clouds नहीं भी हैं और बारिश नहीं भी है, but even then their mood is on and they are willing to do the best. So एक person जो कि moody है, जो कि अपने mood के मुताबिक चलता है, जो कि हर वक्त कोई response मतलब उसने देना है और वो according to action reaction के मुताबिक चलता है, that person is not a good leader. So we need to have those leaders who are proactive, who predict, who plan in advance. So that shows their stability. And the next one is self-confidence. So self-confidence is another important skill of an effective leader. Like having confidence in yourself is really very important, and how one can get that self-confidence. Now this is a question you need to ask. जैसे हमने पिछले lecture में बात की थी कि you must do your analysis. Like for example, we have talked about your strengths and weaknesses. कि what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? आपकी strengths क्या हैं? आपके कौन से ऐसे areas हैं जिनमें आप बहुत अच्छे हैं? Like for example, आपकी written communication कैसी है? आपकी oral communication कैसी है? आपके analytical skills कैसी हैं? आपकी decision making skills कैसी हैं? आपकी numerical skills कैसी हैं? आपकी decision making skills. So इस तरह की skills की हमने बात की कि आपका उसमें क्या level है. तो आपके वो areas for improvement. So knowing yourself is really very important. So nobody is perfect in this world. I'm not here saying that we need to have perfect persons as leaders, but what I'm trying to say here that we need to do our self-analysis, and that is only possible if we develop our habit that we keep on focusing on our strengths and weaknesses. So उसका फ़ायदा क्या है? उसका फ़ायदा ये है कि जो हमारी स्ट्रेंथ्स हैं उसको हम मज़ीद पॉलिश कर सकते हैं और स्ट्रेंथ्स को हम बेटर यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं. वन थिंग. ऑन द अदर साइड जो हमारे एरियाज फॉर इम्प्रूवमेंट हैं या जो हमारी वीकनेसेस हैं एज ए प्रोफेशनल वर्किंग इन पब्लिक सेक्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान, व्हाट वी नीड टू डू इज वी नीड to first of all we know that these are the weaknesses, okay, and then after you identify your weaknesses, then you try solving, you try overcoming those weaknesses. So this is really very important if you need to have a wonderful self-confidence. And the next skill a leader, effective leader should have, that is the dominance. Now dominance is really very important. People who are dominant, like for example, आप अगर किसी शादी की तकरीब में जाते हैं या किसी फंक्शन में जाते हैं या किसी जगह आपका गेट टुगेदर है या किसी फॉर्मल या इनफॉर्मल सिटिंग में आप बैठे हुए हैं, तो यू सी दैट कि कुछ लोग उनमें से एक बड़ी गैदरिंग में चंद लोग ऐसे होते हैं जो कि थोड़े ही वक्त में बाकी लोगों पे डोमिनेंट हो जाते हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल तमाम लोग मिल के उनकी बात सुनना शुरू कर देते हैं, या कुछ लोग ऐसे होते हैं जो अपनी बात के अंदर उनकी बात में एक लॉजिक होती है, उनकी बात में एक वेट होता है, एक वजन होता है, और जब वो बात करते हैं तो उनके इर्द गिर्द जो लोग बैठे हुए हैं दे आर इन्फ्लुएंस, दे आर मोटिवेटेड, और वो उनकी बात में एग्री करना शुरू कर देते हैं, और वहाँ पे वो अपनी बातों को इम्पोज नहीं कर रहे होते बल्कि विद लॉजिक बात कर रहे होते हैं, अपने फुल कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ बात कर रहे होते हैं. तो वहाँ पे हमें एक डोमिनेंस नजर आती है. तो लीडर, एक इफेक्टिव लीडर एक ऐसा पर्सन है कि जब वो बात करे, चाहे वो रिटन कम्युनिकेशन है, चाहे वो ओरल कम्युनिकेशन है, चाहे वो कोई प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहा है या दे रही है, तो वहाँ पे उसकी एक डोमिनेंस होनी चाहिए. कि अगर वो डोमिनेंट नहीं है तो डेफिनेटली एक मेजर वीक एरिया होगा उस लीडर का. तो डेफिनेटली डोमिनेंस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्किल रिक्वायर्ड बाय इफेक्टिव लीडर्स. एंड द नेक्स्ट लास्ट वन हियर इज हाई एनर्जी. Now, effective leaders are full of energies. People who lack energy, people who have, like for example, problems, like for example, who are lazy, or people who used to do things slowly. So, of course, we need to have leaders who are full of energy, who are active, who are dynamic, who influence others. And if you are able to influence others only if you yourself have that high wonderful energy level. So having that wonderful energy level is required in you, and once you have that wonderful energy level, so of course you can try to transfer that energy to your followers. And if you are a slow learner, and if you are a lazy person, and अगर आपको आहिस्ता आहिस्ता काम करने का शौक है, और अगर आप की बातों में, आपके एक्शंस में एनर्जी नज़र नहीं आती, तो डेफिनेटली इसका इम्पैक्ट आपके फॉलोअर्स के ऊपर भी होता है, और आपके फॉलोअर्स भी जो ज़्यादा पॉसिबिलिटी ये है कि वो भी इसी तरह एक एवरेज परफॉर्मर या स्लो परफॉर्मर बनना शुरू हो जाते हैं. एंड दैट इज़ नॉट गुड फॉर योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, एंड दैट इज़ नॉट गुड फॉर द लीडर, एंड ऑफ कोर्स दैट इज़ नॉट गुड फॉर योर फॉलोअर्स एज वेल. सो हमने इस स्लाइड में क्या देखा कि देर आर डिफरेंट स्किल्स ऑफ हाईली इफेक्टिव लीडर्स, और इन तमाम स्किल्स को इट इज़ एन ऑनगोइंग प्रोसेस. So good effective leaders, they need to keep on improving these skills, and once they are able to improve these skills, of course they can do wonders. Now there are different leadership styles. So here we talk about which leadership style is needed, and these are the different leadership styles. And the first one is coercive leadership. Now, as the name shows, that it means that these leaders are those people who want things to be done. Now, they force their followers, they just impose, they say that I want you to do this thing. So they don't care about their feelings, they don't care about their emotions, and they are just working like robots that I want you to do this thing. And they are called coercive leaders. The next feature these coercive leadership have is the atmosphere he creates may not be the friendly. So the environment or the atmosphere in your office may not be friendly. It could be harsh, like for example people are unhappy in most cases. And then the next is work goes as instructed. So whatever like the situation is, whether you are happy or unhappy, whether you are like for example going through a sad incident, or whether, like for example, something really bad happened to you, but these leaders, they don't care. These coercive leaders, they don't care, and they say that you must work as instructed, and in most cases they don't care about your feelings. And the next feature of coercive leadership is no liberty to take independent decision by employees. Now you see that this is really, when we talk about, there is no involvement of employees in decision making. So it means that when you are unable to like make any decision as a follower, or when you are not involved in decision making, where is your motivation level, whether it goes up or go down? Of course it goes down and goes down. So in coercive leadership, there is no involvement of employees in decision making, and of course that is not helping out. And then it helps people break unsuccessful habits and make them work well. So of course there are certain benefits of coercive leadership, like for example, there are persons who have some bad habits, or there are persons who do not follow rules and regulations. So for those people who do not follow rules and regulations, and for those people who have developed certain bad habits, so in order to break those bad habits of those poor performing persons, and in order to make them perform well, this coercive leadership is required. But overall we can say that the advantages of coercive leadership is less as compared to disadvantages. So as a professional, we believe that coercive leadership in most cases is not helpful. The next one is authoritative leadership. Now authoritative leadership means that it places employees and work within the organizational goals. Now as the name suggests here, that so the leader is using his authority to place work and employees within the organizational goals. Like for example, organization have different goals, and then of course employees have different goals, and then the authoritative leadership, what they do is they place employees and work within the organizational goals. So whatever employees is supposed to do in an organization, that must be as per the goals of the organization. And the next feature of authoritative leadership is this style requires careful handling to avoid criticism. Now there is a lot of criticism on authoritative leadership, so a careful handling is required. So when we talk about, like for example, strict boundaries here, so here we need to be highly careful that employees are not harmed, because there are chances that people criticize a lot on authoritative leadership. So person who is authoritative leader, he or she requires to be highly careful to avoid criticism. The next one leadership style here is affiliative leadership. Now here leader creates harmony among his people. Now you see that leader is more focusing on harmony, like for example coordination and cooperation of his people, of his followers, of his team members. So creating harmony. What is the purpose of harmony? Of course, the basic purpose of harmony is that leader is trying to strengthen the relationship of its organizational employees. And once you develop relationship of your employees, of course you are able to achieve of course your goals. And then in this affiliative leadership, the next feature is leader shares ideas, builds trust, and communicates frequently. Now sharing idea is one feature. The thing is building trust and communicates frequently. So these are really wonderful things, that sharing and building trust, and then communication is really frequent. Now these things are of course strengthening this leadership style here. The next one is looks at people as precious resource. So we have talked about that human resource is the most important asset of any organization. And here in this affiliative leadership style, the leader looks at the people who are working in that particular organization as the most important resource. And this is really wonderful. And then employee driven and motivating. So overall, we can say that this affiliative leadership style is highly focused on employees, and then it is highly motivating. The next one is the democratic leadership. So when we talk about democratic leadership, it means that it builds atmosphere of trust and respect. Now, what does it mean? It means that in this type of leadership style, like building a supportive environment in the organization, of course, and that builds and strengthens the trust of employees. And then, of course, there is an atmosphere in the organization which is ethical, and of course, that is respectful atmosphere in the organization. And the next feature is employees' morale is high and they know what to expect. Now here is employees are highly motivated, and they have, like for example, they are clear about their expectations. So it means that there is clear communication going on, and then employees are well informed and participate in decision making. So in democratic leadership, employees are well informed, so they have, like for example, proper knowledge what is going on in the organization. They have like proper knowledge about the rules and regulations, and of course they involve in decision making. So that is a wonderful feature of democratic leadership. The next feature of this leadership style is team generate ideas. So here you see that in our first lecture, I've talked about 1 + 1 is equal to what? Do you remember that? We talked about 1 + 1 is equal to 11. So एक और एक 11 होते हैं. So this is the basic theme behind this teamwork, that so this democratic leadership style focuses more on teamwork, and of course team can give better result as compared to individual results. And the next feature of this wonderful democratic leadership style is there will be time consuming meetings. Now this is one of the disadvantage of this leadership style, that there will be time consuming meetings. Of course, in democratic leadership, since as we earlier told you that like employees are participating in decision making, they are involved, they are giving feedback, so everybody has a chance to speak about his or her problems and overall problems. So of course the meeting takes time. So of course when the meeting takes more time, so more time is required for decision making. And of course in this rapidly growing world, if we take more time in decision making, then that can of course hurt the organization. So this is really very important, that we should be able to make rapid decisions. And then so democratic leadership style, the next feature is everyone cannot be satisfied. So this is another drawback of this democratic leadership style, that it is really very difficult because you cannot satisfy everybody. So if you expect that everybody will be satisfied in the result of this democratic leadership, of course that is not possible. So when 100% satisfaction is not guaranteed here, so it means that we need to look at those factors why people are dissatisfied in some situations. So we need to find the root causes, and we need to address those root causes. So in this way we can manage this dissatisfaction factor of our employees in an organization. Okay, the next leadership style is pace setting leadership. Now in this, it does things fast and does them good. Now this leader is a dynamic and a fast performer. Like for example, this type of leader believes on fast work and does his or her activities in time, identifies poor performers and call for better results. So this again leader, this pace setting leadership is, like for example, is good in identifying the poor performers, and of course try to ensure better results. And the next is works well with teams lagging behind, demotivated or without commitment. So this pace setting leadership is able to influence those teams who are not highly motivated, and of course people having less commitment or low commitment in the organization. So improving their morale, improving their motivation level, and of course helping people grow and improving their performance. These are some of the major functions of this pace setting leadership. The next is coaching leadership. Now in this style of leadership, we talk about the leaders who identify strengths and weaknesses of the teams and help them grow. Now, very important thing is, again and again I repeat that, knowing about your strength and weaknesses is really very important. मेरा आप सब लोगों के लिए एक ही मशवरा है कि आज अभी से अपने बारे में सोचना शुरू कर दें कि what are your wonderful strengths and what are your weaknesses or what are your areas for improvement. So in coaching leadership, a leader identifies the strengths and weaknesses of his followers, of his team members, and then tell them how to overcome their weaknesses and how to grow, how to improve their performance. And the next feature is the leader delegates extensively to convert employees into leaders. Now this is really one of the most important and wonderful feature of coaching leadership, that here the leader is not only focusing on performance of employees, the leader is also trying to convert the team members or the followers into leaders. Now this is really a wonderful thing, and I think that we should all work on it, that why not we try to make our team members, why not we try to make our followers, why not we try to convert them to become good leaders. And then the next one is, this leadership style, coaching leadership style, is useful when employees are aware of their strengths and develop their leadership. So this leadership style is only beneficial when employees are aware about their strengths and weaknesses, and then of course when they know about their strengths and weaknesses, they can only then develop their leadership style. Okay, now moving on to the transformational leadership. Now what is transformational leadership? The process whereby an individual engages with others and creates a connection that raises the level of motivation and morality in both the leaders and follower. Now here in transformational leadership, according to Ron Riggio, defines the characteristics in transformational leadership as, this is charismatic, visionary leaders who transform organizations through empowering followers. So now you see that this is something which is charismatic, which is like for example, these leaders, they have a wonderful vision and they know how to, like for example, transform organizations into wonderful organizations, and that is only possible by empowering their employees. And the next feature is leaders who bring out the best in followers and develop them into leaders. Now again and again we are talking about strengths and weaknesses. Again and again we talked about how to get the best out of us, and these transformational leaders, they help us, they help their team members, they help their followers to bring out the best. Like for example, आप देख लें कि अभी तक आपने जितनी भी स्टडीज हासिल की हैं, like for example, how many students they like for example ask questions from their teachers. Now how many of us who are working in public sector or private sector, तो ऑफिस मीटिंग्स के अंदर अगर आप देखें कि कितने लोग हैं जो कि क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन में अपने आप को पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं, क्वेश्चन करते हैं, आर्गुमेंट्स करते हैं, ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग करते हैं, जो कि मतलब एक लॉजिक के साथ बात करते हैं. तो जो एक आम ऑब्जर्वेशन में आया है कि जब हम पब्लिक सेक्टर की बात करते हैं तो बहुत कम लोग हैं जो ऑफिस मीटिंग्स के अंदर दे आर इन्वॉल्व्ड इन डिस्कशंस, जो कि लॉजिक्स दे रहे हैं, या वो अपना होमवर्क करके आए होते हैं, या वो उसके अंदर सीरियसली इन्वॉल्व होते हैं. तो यहाँ पे हमें ये नज़र आ रहा है कि जो लीडर्स अपने फॉलोअर्स को जो उनकी जो हिडन क्वालिटीज़ हैं उसको बाहर लेके आते हैं। मेरा जो अपना ज़ाती एक्सपीरियंस ये है कि ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स जो क्लास के अंदर बहुत कम पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं, टीचर से बहुत कम क्वेश्चन करते हैं, जब उन स्टूडेंट्स को मैंने कहा कि प्लीज़ स्टैंड अप और आप खड़े होके एक प्रेजेंटेशन दें, आप खड़े होके क्वेश्चन करें, आप कोई कमेंट करें, तो बिलीव मी कि जब उन स्टूडेंट से मैंने ये कहा और आगे से उन्होंने जब प्रेजेंटेशन दी, उन्होंने क्वेश्चन किया, उन्होंने को आर्गुमेंट दिया, उन्होंने जो टॉपिक हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे उसके ऊपर उन्होंने कमेंट्स दिए, तो वो सुन के पूरी क्लास मुझ समेत हम सब हैरान हो गए। एंड वी आर सो हैप्पी कि वो स्टूडेंट्स जो कम पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे थे, जो अपनी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू नहीं दे रहे थे, जब उनको मोटिवेट किया पॉजिटिवली मैंने कि वो अपना पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू दें, तो उनके जो रेज किए हुए क्वेश्चंस थे वो बहुत वंडरफुल क्वेश्चंस थे। उन्होंने जो कमेंट दिए दोज वर यूनिक कमेंट्स। इट मीन्स कि व्हाट वाज द प्रॉब्लम? द प्रॉब्लम वाज ओनली वन थिंग कि लैक ऑफ like for example उसको हम कह सकते हैं कि लैक ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल फियर ऑफ द अननोन, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल उनको फील होता है कि मुझे ये नहीं आता, तो वो जो सेंस है आपका, जो सेंस जो फीलिंग है आपकी कि मुझे ये काम नहीं आता, उसी चीज़ को, उसी सेंस को अगर आप कन्वर्ट कर दें एज ए गुड लीडर, कि अगर आप उसके अंदर एक कॉन्फिडेंस लेके आएँ, उसके कॉन्फिडेंस को बिल्डअप करें और उसके अंदर एक फीलिंग क्रिएट करें, उसकी परसेप्शन को इम्प्रूव करें, कि बजाय कि आप ये कहें कि आई कैन नॉट, why not you say I can? So एक पॉजिटिव एनर्जी आप अपने एम्प्लॉइज के अंदर लेके आ सकते हैं, और ये ट्रांसफॉर्मेशनल लीडर्स जो हैं, ट्रांसफॉर्मेशनल, दिस इज व्हाट दे आर डूइंग। एंड देन the next feature is leaders who motivate and challenge teams to perform at levels beyond expectations. Now this is the most important feature of this style of leadership, and this is called transformational leadership. So they motivate and challenge teams to do beyond the imagination of stakeholders. Like for example, ये वो लीडर्स हैं जो अपनी टीम्स को और अपने फॉलोअर्स को इतना मोटिवेट करते हैं कि उनकी परफॉर्मेंस जो फॉलोअर्स की और टीम की होती है वो बियॉन्ड इमेजिनेशन चली जाती है, जो एक्सपेक्टेशन को बीट कर जाते हैं। लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल कि आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जिन के लिए सर्व कर रही है, जो उसके कस्टमर्स हैं या जो उसके स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं या उसके जो शेयर होल्डर्स हैं, तो आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जिसके लिए भी अपनी प्रोडक्ट्स या सर्विसेज जो है वो मैन्युफैक्चर करें या प्रोवाइड करें मार्केट में, तो वो जो कस्टमर की या स्टेक होल्डर्स की जो एक्सपेक्टेशंस हैं, उन एक्सपेक्टेशंस को न सिर्फ ये मीट करते हैं बल्कि उन एक्सपेक्टेशन से एक्सीड कर जाते हैं, बियॉन्ड चले जाते हैं। तो ये जो एक्सपेक्टेशन से भी ऊपर ज़्यादा आप अच्छा परफॉर्म करते हैं, जो आपको क्लास में अगर ये कहा जाता है कि आप एक अच्छा काम करके लेके आए, तो स्टूडेंट जो है वो ना सिर्फ अच्छा काम करके लेके आते हैं बल्कि वो इतना अच्छा काम करते हैं कि उतना अच्छा काम शायद दुनिया में किसी ने नहीं किया होता। सो दिस इज व्हाट द बेसिक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ अ लीडर शुड बी टू, कि ना सिर्फ ये कि वो हमारे बेस्ट पोटेंशियल को बाहर लेके आए, बल्कि वो हमारी जो यूनिक अल्लाह ताला ने हमें जो कॉम्पिटेंस दी है, जो हमें सलाहियतें दी हैं, उनको बाहर लेके आए ताकि हम कुछ ऐसा कर सकें जो इससे पहले दुनिया में नहीं किया गया। तो हम अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को एक बहुत वंडरफुल प्लेस बना सकते हैं, हम अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को बहुत ज़्यादा आगे लेके जा सकते हैं। वी कैन सेट द बेंचमार्क्स। ऑल द टाइम वी टॉक अबाउट कि जी एक मल्टीनेशनल कंपनी है, उन्होंने ये सेट बेंचमार्क किए हैं, एक डिफरेंट मल्टीनेशनल कंपनी है, उन्होंने ये सेट बेंचमार्क सेट किए हैं। व्हाई नॉट के वी से कि हमारी एक पब्लिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जिसके ये बेंचमार्क्स हैं। तो देयर आर मेनी एग्जांपल्स इन पब्लिक सेक्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान, जिन कंपनीज ने, जिन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ने बेंचमार्क सेट किए हैं और वो पूरी दुनिया के लिए बहुत बड़ी बड़ी एग्जांपल्स सेट किए हैं। तो व्हाई नॉट कि जिस पब्लिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में आप काम कर रहे हैं या आप काम करने जा रहे हैं, आप उनके परफॉर्मेंस लेवल को इतना आगे ले जाएं कि जो बाकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं पाकिस्तान में या इवन पाकिस्तान से बाहर, व्हाई नॉट दे फॉलो आवर बेंचमार्क्स। Now the question here arises that which leadership style is needed here? So according to the philosopher Davenport 1998, there is no one best style of leadership. Successful leaders are said to be able to adopt their leadership style to meet subordinates' needs and particular situation. Now here you see that when we talk about the best style of leadership, so there is no one best style of leadership in the world. So here this philosopher focuses on that we need to have those leaders who act according to the situation. So we need to have those leaders who are caring. We need to have those leaders who help us to do something which is beyond imagination. So it is a combination of all those things. So here we are focusing on the situation. Here we are focusing on the, like for example, what are the expectations of employees, and then here we are talking about the expectations of the stakeholders. Here we are talking about the expectations of our customers. So having, like for example, caring, like internal and external customers is one factor. Then of course giving result and acting according to situation. These are the leadership features we need to have. Okay, here we are talking about, like for example, different styles of leadership, and according to Davenport 1998, there is no one best style of leadership in the world. So here he focuses on the situation, he focuses on the interest of internal and external customers. So a best leader is a person who is able to take care of internal customers as well as external customers. So internal customer means the employees who are working in the organization, and external customer means that, like for example, who are the buyers or the purchaser or who are the users of your products and services. And then of course a leader who acts according to situation. So these are some of the features. When we combine these features, then we may say that these are the type of leaders we need. So thank you very much here, all of you. And so before I leave, let me give you a brief overview of whatever we have discussed in today's lecture. Okay, we have talked about leadership, we have talked about who is a good leader, who is an effective leader. We talked about different skills of effective leader, like for example in today's lecture we have talked about, like for example, strong communication skills as one of the skills required by effective leaders. We have talked about judgment skills, we have talked about intelligence skills, we have talked about stability, we have talked about confidence, we have talked about judgment skills, and so we have talked about different skills an effective leader should have in order to motivate his or her employees. We have also talked about different styles of leadership. And we have talked about, like for example, in different situations there are different leadership styles are required. So at the end we talked about transformational leadership. So this is one of the leadership styles where the leader ensures that his or her followers do something which is beyond the imagination of the target market, which is beyond the imagination of all the stakeholders or the shareholders. Okay ji, thank you very much here for today's lecture. Inshallah, see you next time in another lecture. Thank you very much.